Hi, everybody. Welcome to our panel today, or our event today. We are doing the Eyes on the Future, Planning for Retirement, and we are super excited to have you all here today. I'm going to pass it off to Colleen Carroll, who's my colleague, and she'll spend some time chatting with Paul today, introducing Paul and getting us all some really great information. I'm really excited to hear both of them talk and share some really cool, exciting things with all of us today. So thank you all for being here. And Colleen, why don't you take it away?
Thanks so much, Dory. Hi, everyone. I'm Colleen Carroll. I'm the Director of Alumni Success for the Ohio University Alumni Association. And today's program is just one example of the Alumni Association's efforts to support and celebrate the lifelong career success of alumni. So we're here for you for life, to support you as you follow your career pathway, and really, really happy to have Paul with us today. So just some housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions or comments throughout the panel, if you have questions for Paul, you can use the chat and just select all panelists. So that way, just Paul and I will see them. If you have a comment for the group, you can select everyone. So just make sure if you have a question that it's directed to all panelists, and if you have a comment for everyone, that you select everyone. And we will have a Q&A session at the end. So we'll be collecting those questions and we'll get to those at the end, as well as maybe getting to some throughout the presentation. So without further ado, I would love to introduce our presenter, Paul Gaidosh. He is an electrical engineering alumnus of Ohio University, where he's also a Foundation Board trustee and a member of the Rusk College of Engineering and Technology Board of Visitors. Professionally, he's currently the managing director of Kensington Wealth Partners Limited, where he provides counseling and implementation strategies for wealth preservation and transfer. So his clients there range from individuals to business owners and executives of private and public enterprises. And he helps his clients reach their objectives via financial, estate, and investment planning, as well as tax reduction and charitable giving strategies. Always great to have that tax help. He has been listed in Worth magazine for multiple years as one of the top 250 financial advisors in America, and a top advisor for doctors, as listed in Medical Economics. Business First of Columbus has also listed him among its top financial planners for multiple years. And Columbus CEO magazine has named him a superstar in the finance and accounting category. And today we have him all to ourselves. We're very lucky. He's affiliated with Lincoln Financial Advisors and a perennial Chairman Council qualifier. He's a member of the Financial Planning Association and maintains the professional and educational requirements for the certification as a certified financial planner. So he's legit. And he also maintains Series 7, 6, 62, 63, and 66 securities registrations and insurance licensing in many states. He's written numerous published pieces and made many media appearances to co-author a book called Master Your Financial Success: Retirement and Legacy Secrets from Planning Professionals. And he is co-author of the book Giving Philanthropy for Everyone. He's also a licensed pilot, which I think is pretty cool, and holds an MBA from Duke University and is active in national industry advisory councils, as well as lots of boards. So thank you so much, Paul. It was a treat to read through all your credentials and share those with our audience today. Let's go ahead and dive into your presentation if you're ready. And Paul, when you wrap up, Kelly Katowski from the university will join us for a quick wrap up. So let's go ahead and dive in without further ado.
Colleen, thank you. So, that's quite an introduction. So let's see if I can hold up my end of the bargain. So maybe the takeaway as I was listening to your introduction is that I am all in financial planning, and I'm all in with Ohio University. And maybe that's why I was asked to speak for a few minutes today. So as with any session, those that I attend, for example, I'm just looking for one or two ideas, one or two takeaways, not 17, not 22. So my key themes today are going to be, number one, owning one's situation. Number two, learning. and number 3, acting. So own, learn, and act. And you're going to hear that a few times here over the next few minutes. Next slide, please, Barb. So as we look at this list, the top 10 stressors in life, my guess is that each of us today has experienced one or several of these. And they're not necessarily in a particular order, although the death of a spouse or a family member knocks us back on our heels and is very stressful. A divorce does the same. Money troubles, we're going to be talking about money today. Looming retirement. You might think if you're ready, you know, retirement is days away, it would be all excitement. But there's a lot of stress, even if one doesn't admit it publicly. The loss of a job, there's no question the stress that it initiates. And then the sale of a business, being married, there's stress with being married, right? We're integrating 2 people from different parents. Moving is very stressful. And then we go through phases in life, or I can speak of myself. I've gone through phases in life where things are clicking. We're on autopilot, or a little reference to the flying. And then other phases where things are not clicking and we're questioning, we're stressed about who we are and where we are. And finally, the new one, COVID, which has just knocked everybody back a peg. And fortunately, it looks as though we may be working our way out of this. I hope so. I just got my first vaccination this past Saturday. So next slide, Barb. Thank you. So today, though, we're going to be talking about, well, we listed it as retirement, but I would rather call it financial independence. And the reason that I like the words financial independence is that sometimes that's synonymous with retirement. But if we use the words financial independence, then people that are not money focused, I think, can put their arms around this and embrace what we're going to talk about today. People like artists and musicians and those who want to run for political office, or sociologists, people who they recognize they need enough money to be independent so that they can pursue their dream, they can pursue their true calling. So that's really where our focus will be today, but you will hear the word retirement along with that. Next slide, Barb. Thank you. So for many of us, typical retirement is age 62 or 65, but I will tell you that in my many years in counseling individuals on this subject, the age range is varied and it's growing. So certainly I've worked with people who retired at age 48 and they're still retired at age 68, and it's looking good the rest of their lives. And then more and more of us are working until 67 or 69 or 72, and why not? In general, people's health is much better and the quality of life is better than it used to be. But the other portion of this, the other element, is that some people realize when they get to 62 or 65, they have not captured enough money. We're going to talk extensively about that in the next few minutes. No matter how you view it, the typical retirement is going to last 25 to 30 years, and that is the rub. That's where the pressure comes in. That's where there's tremendous pressure on whatever money we've accumulated to somehow make it last until we're gone. So there is Social Security, and my view, some of you in this session may feel that there won't be Social Security when you're ready for it, but I think there will be in some form. It may be watered down a little bit, but we're all voters, and the first Congress to vote out Social Security won't have jobs very long. So there will be Social Security of some type, might even have a different name in the coming years. Many of us have 401ks or 403bs. We're going to talk about those in a little bit further, but these are employer-sponsored plans that allow us to capture our own money as well as an employer match in many cases. There's pensions, and again, if you're a university employee, as an example, you probably still are qualifying for a pension. If you're a teacher, you may be participating in a pension, but I will tell you that the vast majority of the pensions have been terminated, and you are seeing those pensions being changed as we speak. I think in Ohio, I've seen that they've gone from annual increases of pensions to no increases, and they're watering down in retiree benefits, health benefits, for example. But pensions are very powerful. Bank savings, the question there is, I leave money in the bank and it's earning 0. What do I do about that? And then finally, investments. To some, investments are fun, and to many others, they are mystifying, and they just cause our brains to freeze. So let's see what we can do. No matter though, these are all very, very serious issues. Next slide, please. So the typical retirement, and some of us may not want to hear this, but the typical retirement just requires knowledge of, money, not fancy knowledge, but money, some level of knowledge of investments, understanding some level of taxes, budgeting, and I hate that word budgeting. I don't really like budgeting, but it's knowing what we're spending on an ongoing basis. We should know what we're spending. And then finally, knowing oneself, which may be the most important of those. And if we have a partner or a spouse, it's also knowing them with respect to their views of money, and then looking at how well those two pictures, your picture and their picture, how well they fit or don't fit, but getting that out in the open. Next slide, thank you. So in its simplest form, I'm jumping ahead here a little bit. Let's pretend for a moment that you are a month away from retirement. And if you are, and if any of my clients are on this, I don't know if you are or not, but you'll see me draw this with a Sharpie. I don't do PowerPoints with clients. I use a Sharpie and a blank piece of paper. It seems to be a better means of communication. But this, you will see this, and you can draw this for yourself. So the vertical axis, the left-hand axis, is monthly dollars, monthly income, let's say. And then the lower horizontal axis is years. So let's just jump to the top of the graph for a moment. And what's most important here is knowing what your monthly needs. So you can see that near the top of the green graph. You've got to determine what amount is going out every month. You have to know that number. Do we have to know that today? It's better if we do, but we better know it before we enter retirement. So then the question is, okay, if that's what I need, maybe that's $5,000 a month after taxes. That's what I need. That's what I'm spending for everything. Or maybe it's 10,000, or maybe it's 22,000, or maybe it's 75,000. And I have clients in that entire spectrum. But let's just take it back down to 5,000 as an example. So then what we need to do is compare what we need every month in retirement to what is coming in the door. So the first might be Social Security for you, if you're eligible, or your PERS. And the next is the Social Security of your spouse or partner. So that could be two sources of income. If you don't have a partner, if you're doing this solo, well, then there's only one, right? You might have worked in a setting where there's a pension in the past, so that might be in the mix starting at age 62 or 65. Maybe you have a rental property, maybe you don't, but that could be a source of income. But when we add those slices, eventually there's a gap. And that gap is between the sum of those assured flows and what we really need. And it's that gap that needs to be met with withdrawals from 401ks and IRAs and 403bs, or working later into retirement, maybe not a career position, but a part-time position. Some consulting could work. And finally, if there is an expected inheritance, that might be used to plug some of that gap. But it's that gap that creates the most stress and anxiety. And it's the gap. That's where our calculations, that's where our attention needs to be. Next slide. Thank you. So in an otherwise perfect world, well, we just do some math and we determine what we need, but it's not that simple. So life gets in the way. Life happens. So I would ask you to raise your hand, but you don't need to. You know, anyone here who's been raising children knows that's a very expensive proposition. I mean, you gladly spend the dollars, but it takes a lot of dollars to raise a child today. Many of us help others. So we may help an adult child. We may help a family member that's fallen upon hard times. We may be on cruise control and we lose a job. We get downsized. And so what's the first thing that suffers? Our savings towards retirement. And in fact, what happens more is we tend to dip into the monies we might have saved and or use credit cards to make things work. There's divorce. Just take what we have and divide it by 2. And that, as anyone who has experienced divorce knows, you get knocked back in terms of any planning, any picture you had created, any financial picture is just torn apart and it needs to be put back together in a new form. And then in the right-hand column, I'm sorry, that should be college debt. We read in essentially the paper every day or online every day about the college debt that exists in society today. And that can be quite a ball and chain on a younger couple or an individual trying to get started for their long-term financial well-being. Somebody may have been in medical school, so they get a very late start. They have college debt, $250,000 of college debt, and they're getting a late start on accumulating money for retirement. There could be medical bills. There's just the intimidation of this whole subject. And then finally, someone might say, well, I would put money away, but bonds and CDs are paying 0, and the stock market is way too high and it's going to crash. And then Washington is such a mess, and that's an easy one. You could have said that last year and the year before and the year before. It's not a political statement. It seems to be a reality. So there's all of these things that would cause one to not take action. Or if we had started down a good path, we just stop. I guess the analogy would be in personal fitness, right? So who here hasn't started some physical fitness program to have something get in the way? We hurt an ankle or we get busy at work and then we abandon it. And this financial stuff is certainly on a par with our personal health, both being very, very important. On intimidation, I was reminded this is something involving me and OU, but I was in engineering, as Colleen mentioned, and I could not get past calculus. And I won't make this a long story, it'll be very brief, but I was intimidated by calculus. Back then it was called 263 A, B, and C. And it just intimidated me. And finally, I approached it from a different direction, which I hope you'll do with money. And the light bulb went on, and somehow I worked through it and graduated from that beautiful place in Athens with a degree in engineering. Next slide, please. So this is a really simple picture of your financial future. So, many of us are on the left-hand side of that page today. We're in the accumulation mode, all right? And there is some amount at the top of that peak that's called like your number. There's actually books of that title. You'll see a graphic of it here later in my talk, but there is a number that can be calculated that some of us who are very goal focused, it could be that it's $1 million. It could be it's 840,000. It could be that it's 5 million, but whatever it is, there's some number we need to get to when we're ready to walk out the door or be financially independent, so that we then start to spend that money down towards 0 and frankly, perfect financial planning says you spend your last dollar the day you die, or though I have heard, or you write your last check the day before you die, and then it bounces the next day. But either way, that would be perfect financial planning. Now, I acknowledge that if you do that and your last dollar is spent the day you pass, there is nothing for children or grandchildren. So some of my clients, they want a different model. They don't want that curve to go to zero. They want it to go somewhere off to the right. But it's very calculable. It's the analytics. There are plenty of tools. We'll talk about those in a moment. But anyway, this is your picture, and it depends on a number of variables. Again, during the accumulation phase, how much are you capturing per month or per year? What kind of investment returns are we getting on the money? If it's all under the mattress, the answer is zero. If it's all in gold, the answer could still be zero, or it could be some big number. And then what other sources of assured income like Social Security and pensions and all are in the mix? Next slide, please. So what do we do about this? So you are attending today because you must have some level of interest in this subject of retirement or financial independence. So the first thing we need to do, this goes back to the first thing I shared when we started talking, and that is each of us needs to take ownership of this. So there is no one that is going to take responsibility for your retirement. No one. If we go back a generation or two ago, and there are some instances today where this can work. People worked for somewhat paternalistic organizations where if you work there, if somehow you could stay there for 30 years and there was a pension program, and if somehow you could manage your spending so that by the time you retired, your pension after tax was greater than or equal to what you were spending, it all works. But as you saw in an earlier slide, life happens, right? So the biggest thing is that we change jobs nowadays quite a bit. And number two, most pensions have gone away. And number three, we're humans, so there's behavioral economics, and we may be cruising along, there's a market correction, and we pull our money out of the stock market. It's 2008, 2009, 2010, and I just can't take it. Well, then we're sitting there in 11, 12, and 13 when we're setting new records when the market's rebounded. So it's taking ownership, and it's starting today. And it doesn't really matter where we are today. No matter whether you're judging it to be good or bad, there is a time value of money that's getting money working sooner. And in my opinion, there's a time value of knowledge. So what I mean by that is if you commit to learning about money today, you can get to work sooner, and it takes fewer dollars to make this all work long term. The next part is, and you've heard this from me before, we need to engage our spouse or partner. So many times, if you have a partner or a spouse, one in the household does focus on money, and sometimes the other one does not. And those of you who understand what I'm talking about, you may be nodding right now. You can't handle finances unilaterally. And if you're the spouse who doesn't care about money, you can't really wash your hands of this. You have to be engaged. You have to care. It doesn't mean you have to be the one who manages the finances every day, but there need to be regular, scheduled reviews so that you have a really good understanding of where you are financially. Hey, that partner or spouse could be gone tomorrow. They could pass away unexpectedly. There could be a divorce. So you have to be engaged. So point number 4, as I mentioned just a second ago, you have to accept wherever you are today. And so sometimes when I sit down with someone, one of the spouses is if I use the word embarrassment, it's the simplest word to use. They're embarrassed by where they are today. They really believe that they have not done a very good job of accumulating money. But in my opinion, and I share this with them, to their betterment, they're sitting there with me because they want to do something about it. They've come to the conclusion it's time to do something. And so it's never too late. It sounds trite, but it's never too late. The key is taking the action. And it's so easy now to get help. So there are books, there's libraries of books on this subject. Most are well done. The internet is a ready source. Right now, some of you may be Googling some of the things I just shared with you. Hopefully you'll stop for a moment. And online advice. There are places like Fidelity and other places where you can actually hook up with someone and get financial counsel. Or you can hire someone in the industry, someone who does financial planning. And they, I will tell you, my experience is they are people who genuinely care. They could have worked in any business. If they are purely money focused, they tend not to be in my part of the industry. They might be on Wall Street, but they tend not to be in the financial planning sector. People in the planning sector are those who they have a combination of empathy, understanding, and financial knowledge, certainly, and a bias to action. Barb, next slide. Thank you. So now it's going to seem like we're getting into the weeds a little bit, so I apologize. So, but bear with me. This is a spot where some people, their brains would start to kind of close. So hang in there with me for a few minutes, and we'll work our way through this. So if you've decided, yes, this is time to do something, I'm going to take action, well, what do we do? So we've got to determine our current situation. How much do we have in savings and in investments? How much do we have in our retirement accounts? And where do we hold all of those accounts? Do we have old 401ks or 403bs sitting at former employers? We're going to do something about that. Do we have college accounts? Do we have our own college accounts that maybe were never tapped? Or do we have college accounts for our children? I apologize. That's not coming from here. Well, maybe it is. Yes, that was mine. Thank you. And then we need to look at our life insurance, our disability insurance, and then finally, in this portion, thank you. We need to look, as I had mentioned earlier, we need to somehow determine, do the math on what we're spending per month. And for some people, it sounds very daunting, but for many of us, okay, we have some money deducted to go to 403bs or 401ks through our employer, and then we end up spending the rest of our take-home pay. Well, that's real easy then. You didn't have to do any calculations. It's equal to your take-home pay. For others, it requires a little more work, but now with so many of our purchases is made on, American Express and credit cards and the like, or through EFTs and our checking, it's pretty easy to determine what we're spending. The other side of that is then the analysis itself. So you can see in some small print on the right, a balance sheet. Well, balance sheets sound like you're a finance major at OU, but all they really are is a listing of everything you kind of own and then another listing of everything you owe. So things you own and things that you owe, and you subtract those that you owe from what you own, and that gives you an idea of your current net worth. This analysis is going to tell you, which is more important than us, what track you're running on. So there is a path. You remember that I showed you the curve that went up and then came down. Each of us is running on some path today. And is it the path we need to be on? Well, this analysis will show us that. And if there is a shortfall, it will tell us in numbers how much more per month or per year we need to capture, and at what kind of average earnings rate. So if all the money is in savings, well, we need to get it working a little harder and to try to earn 6% per year on average or something like that. And finally, looking at our investments, having hopefully someone else help you look at your investments, we identify gaps in our investments. And what do I mean by that? So when we do a risk tolerance questionnaire of people when we first meet, we ask them questions that are really trying to determine, well, how do they feel about risk? How do they feel about the loss of principal? And they answer those questions. And then we look at how they're invested. And many times there's a disconnect. The two don't fit. So we need to make sure they do fit. And we need to make sure that you're very fully diversified. It's very important that you deploy your money, not just in the United States, for example, and not just in large companies that you know by name. Next slide, please. So we've got our spouse or partner on board. Now it's time to do a little bit of tidying up work and take some action. So let's declutter. So was it Marie Kondo wrote that book on decluttering? Well, the same applies to our financial lives. So don't leave money about a lot of former employers. Bring them all together in one account so that you can really monitor where you are. If you have 7 credit cards, get it down to 1. If you have college debt, consolidate it. If you have a mortgage, if you haven't refinanced in the last 10 months or 12 months, you need to look at that again. I mean, think about the power. If you were able to refinance, you might be able to free up $300 or $500 a month that you could put towards retirement. We will never have lower mortgage rates the rest of our adult lives than we have today. So it's the perfect time to use other people's money. So the other piece to this are some basics, some foundation items, like we need to retain an emergency fund. That's some money sitting in a local savings account where if something happened to the car, we wouldn't have to use a credit card. We could just pay cash for that. Or on the other side of it, there's this sofa. There's, the sofa you've had your eye on for a few months and it goes on sale for 40% off. Well, that's a good use of that cash, right? We need to analyze, if we didn't wake up tomorrow morning, how would our survivors be? How would our children be with respect to just living day to day? With college, will it be paid for, or will they no longer be able to go to college? And then also, if we were not able to work, if we were disabled, and I've got a number of clients I've worked with over the years, some emergency room doctors, for example, who've become disabled, and they had insurance in place, and as a result, their retirement didn't miss a beat. I mentioned the investments being aligned with our goals and risk tolerance earlier. So off to 401ks and 403bs. So I hope that each of us in the session is capturing some money today, and the easiest way to do it is through your employer. But I find many people only capture as much to optimize the company match. That's not going to get you all the way home to retirement. You really need to be maximum funding your 401k or your 403b. And that may be a real challenge today, but that has to be the goal. And that number is, it changes every year, but I think it's like 19,500 this year. And if you're 50 or older, there's another 6,500 of catch-up provision. So that's like $26,000 that really needs to be put away each year. Even that may not be enough depending on how much you spend in retirement, but it's going to play a big role. And in addition to that, if you're already max funding that, then there are ways to take money out of your checking account electronically. And I can tell you that I learned this about myself a long time ago, and it must be a legacy of my mother, who liked nice things and she liked to shop, and she was a wonderful woman and she was a lot of fun. She's passed, but what I I found that any money sitting in my checking account, this is years ago, it was fair game. And if it was in there, it was going to be spent. So I had to put in mechanisms that would grab money before they really made it to my checking account. And I've done that, and that has been the difference in my whatever level of financial success I've had. The other part is bonuses. So when most of us receive a bonus, it's like and either we use it to catch up on credit card bills that have accumulated, or we reward ourselves. And I'm not suggesting that we don't reward ourselves, but I'm also suggesting that if we know how much we need to be capturing for retirement, that we do capture some of the bonus and put it away also. A couple other foundation items: we should update our wills and powers of attorney. I would ask for a show of hands, but in this setting, it's hard to do that. But maybe I wouldn't do this in public, but you know whether you have a will, and if you do, when you last looked at it. And we find that when we ask the question, some people say, "Oh, I have a will," but when we look at it, sometimes that will was when they had their first child, and now there are 3 children later, and they're later in life. The last piece then is really now, after we've done all of this, that's when we should be looking at our grandkids and charity and our community. What I have found over the years, and Kelly is going to speak in a few minutes about what we might do for our alma mater. But what I have found over the years is that if we were to draw a pyramid, the bottom, the foundational part of the pyramid, I would label as "Am I okay?" ? Am I okay? The next middle part of the pyramid would be, "Is my family okay?" And finally, the top of the pyramid is my community, is my alma mater, is my church okay? But what I have found is that many people, they jump to the middle slice, so they continue to do things for their adult children. They do amazing things for their grandchildren, and all of this is done before they've assured that their own financial future is in good shape. So it's a good time, if you decided to take action, to ask yourself those questions too. I mean, I have 2 grandsons. One is 3 months old, and of course I'll do anything for him. But when we get to retirement, there is no one that's going to help us in retirement. We might have a child who's done very well, they're an orthopedic surgeon, but we're not going to want to ask them for help. So we need to think of ourselves first. It may sound a little selfish, but it's not really being selfish. It's just being focused enough to be prepared, so then we can help our grandchildren, we can help our adult children, we can help our alma mater. If you've done these things, then you need to congratulate yourself. This is a big deal. You've gotten a lot done. Next slide, please. Once you've done all of that, then you occasionally need to revisit it. You don't need to look at the stock market daily. We don't even need to look at your financial plan quarterly or even annually. We just need to view it every couple of years to see if you've changed, to see if your goals have changed, and then recalibrate as such. Here's an idea for you that I think would be amazingly powerful, and that is to find someone, a person, that you can count on as a resource when it comes to money. So this is someone who is knowledgeable about money. So it could be there's someone a little bit older than you. They're savvy, meaning they are somewhat business savvy, they're life savvy. They have a lot of experience, so they've made some mistakes, they've done some things well. You can trust them. They come to know you intimately, and they know your weaknesses and your strengths. Whatever you share with them is non-judgmental. And finally, you know that everything you share with them remains in confidence. And it's kind of like a mentor in business. and a number of us have had those. It is the most powerful thing that you could do to gain an ally to really make this thing work. Now, you can do this on your own, but I'm just sharing kind of an aside that I've seen work very well. Now, clients have hired us to become that resource, but you don't have to hire a professional to take on that role. You can find someone in your life. It could be a family member, it could be a neighbor who you respect, could be a coworker, could be, it's similar to your family doctor. When you go to see your family doctor and there's something going on in your body, you count on them for everything that's on that list. And we can do the same in our financial lives. Next slide, thank you. We're down to our last few slides, and I wanted to share just a couple of other thoughts with you. So, this is all about, first of identifying where you are today, identifying, well, what do I need to do differently than I have been? What dollars do I need to capture? And I guess I need to get started today. I would suggest, especially because it's so easy now, that you make this money world into a hobby. It's so if you go back to when I graduated in electrical engineering, I'd be at a party with a number of young adults, and someone would come up to me and say, Paul, well, what do you do? I mean, this is just conversation. What do you do? And I said, oh, I'm an electrical engineer. Well, the conversation usually ended moments later. But when I made the career change into the financial world, oh my goodness, now everyone wants to talk about the financial world. Everyone wants to learn more about it. And it is so easy to do, and it's actually fun. Now, obviously, it would be more fun for me because this is what I do for a living. But it's fun to demystify money. I think that's where the fun is and the reward is. So I would make it into an avocation. The other thing that's very available to each of us is to ask recent retirees or long-term retirees, what did you do well? So for those of you who are a little bit younger, go to your grandparents. They love to spend time with you, and ask the question, so tell me what you did well in preparing for retirement. And they may come back and say, oh, I was not prepared, and this is what I would do differently. And they'll give you a list of those things. Or they may say, we nailed it. And then you can still say, well, what is it that causes you to say that? Or what did you do poorly? And they'll be very clear with what's available, what you should focus on. So, or you can hire a pro. So, and don't let how they're paid get in the way of that. Whether they charge a fixed fee or an hourly, and they're going to help you with the planning part of this. They're going to help you with the investing part of it, and they're going to help you with taxes. And why are taxes important? I don't pay less taxes because I'm tax averse from a political point of view. I want to pay less taxes because then I have more money towards retirement, towards financial independence. It takes fewer of additional dollars to get to the same goal. Next slide, please. So I've mentioned a couple of times that there's a number of places to go to learn more about this area. They're everywhere. So there's the Motley Fool, and there's Fidelity and Morningstar, and on and on and on. There are no excuses not to know where we are and not to know what path we should be running on to make a good, solid retirement work. There's courses at OU, there's courses at local community colleges. There's Coursera online, which is just skyrocketed in usage during the pandemic. And then there's wonderful books. There's a library of books. The Millionaire Next Door, which was written a number of years ago, is wonderful. There's people in your neighborhood that are very modest. They've driven the same car 10, 12, 14 years. They held down a job for a long time, and they've become millionaires several times over, which would be shocking if you learn that. And this book really delves into that. There's a book that I co-authored recently, Master Your Financial Success, and actually it was an Amazon bestseller, go figure. But all of these books are available on Amazon and in the library at no cost. There's The Number by Leigh Eisenberg, which I mentioned earlier. That's that one that, by the way, with many of these books, you really could read an article on the subject and get the essence of it. You know, The Number is, I don't know, maybe a couple hundred pages, but it really only needs to be about 15 or 20. But the theme and the message is very, very powerful. And there's even fun books in econ, like Freakonomics. Stephen Levitt is like a national treasure, I think. So there's no excuses. The key here is, for this all to work, we need to own our future, and then we need to learn something new in this area called money, and then finally we need to take action. So thank you for your attention and your time. I don't know, Colleen, do you think there might be a question or two?
Hi, yes, we have. I have 3 questions that I see. If I didn't miss any, so I'm going to challenge you to some rapid fire question answering if you're up for the challenge.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you so much for the presentation. So much helpful stuff for all of us, no matter where we are in our retirement planning. Really good advice and really refreshing ways of looking at things. So here's a question. Let me go up to the first one here. So during retirement, what should one assume for annual health care coverage costs? You know, $2,500 a month or $25,000 to $30,000 a year. Is that realistic? What do you advise there?
So if we're talking about the premium for healthcare, I'll answer that first. So with people who take early retirement prior to age 65, then they are responsible for their major medical premiums and out-of-pocket costs. And those premiums for an individual, we're seeing $1,200 is a typical number, $1,000, $1,200. And for a couple, could be double that, plus then the out-of-pocket. And that is significant. And so when someone's talking about early retirement, we encourage them to land a non-career job. If they say, look, I'm done with my career, find a non-career job that includes major medical coverage. That's a big savings on a monthly basis. And then once we reach 65 with Medicare, depending on one's income, earned or unearned income, the premium for that, the maximum premium is $400 a month, plus, you know, out of pocket and some small copays. So, and I apologize, we got a new phone system.
No problem. It's life. It's life on Zoom.
I don't know what to do about it.
There you go. Pick it up and hang it up. The old trick always works.
All right. So we have a new phone system, and I apologize. It's tied to the computer. Just put it in a couple of days ago. So, if you do these projections we talked about, you know, with expenses, and then also.
Paul's a popular guy today.
Sorry. We allow for medical expenses, and what we're really doing is replacing some of the fun expenses with the medical side over time.
Great. We had someone else ask a similar question. How does healthcare planning play into retirement planning? And are there any options prior to Medicare that are available? Is there anything else you want to say more specifically about that?
The key, I think, is finding some other form of employment that's going to provide coverage in some format. Now, if you are in the private sector, there's COBRA for 18 months after one retires, so that could fill the gap. And if you're in the public sector, some of the pension programs do have like lifetime major medical, right? but I really believe more and more of those will be terminated or watered down in the coming years. So more is going to be shouldered by the individual.
Thank you. One more question. What is your opinion on whether a person should hire a professional financial advisor that works with their 401k, for example, Fidelity, and also an advisor for other financial matters like Social Security, banking, insurance, that sort of thing? So working with two folks as opposed to just one.
Oh, okay, that's a good question. So my answer is that to be most efficient with your money, we need to do things in an integrated fashion. So what we find in many instances when we first meet with a client is they have an E-Trade account over here, and they have an insurance agent over here, and they have someone maybe that does their taxes over here. Mm-hmm. And the advice they're getting from their tax person is good tax advice, but it may not be the most effective advice in the big picture. The life insurance person, wants them to buy life insurance, right? So they're buying life insurance, but is it the right amount, and is it the right type? And the E-Trade or a stockbroker, I guess is what we used to go to. They're putting one in investments, and they could be really good investments, but they may not fit our personality, and they may not fit the goal. So my answer to the question is, one should work, if you're going to hire a professional, you should work with someone who looks at all of those things every time you're together, so that you're making the most efficient use of every single dollar.
Great, thank you. Makes good sense. Here's one more question. If you're totally new to planning for retirement, then who do you suggest is the best person or entity to start working on it with? If you're totally new, just getting started,
totally new,
probably feeling overwhelmed. Yeah.
Yeah. So one place one could go is the Certified Financial Planning Board of Standards. So you could Google them, and they then geographically will list planners, people who've received the CFP designation, which also means they're a fiduciary. And a fiduciary is required by regulation to act in your best interest, not in their interest. It's even a higher standard than suitability. So at any rate, that is one place you can go. And they're of various ages. So there could be some, if you're just starting, you could choose to work with somebody very experienced, or you could choose to work with someone similar to your age. Maybe you feel you would connect better with them. And you could, one of the things you want to ask them right away is, well, how are they paid? And if they should find a way, if they're committed to the profession, they should find a way to help you get the guidance that you need. And sometimes they might introduce you to someone else in the profession who might fit you better. But that's where I would start.
Makes sense. And do you mind repeating it? It was Certified Financial Planning Board of
Standards. Board of Standards.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, great.
Sure. Any
advice about life insurance? What's the best kind of life insurance to have after retirement, or with retirement?
Oh, all right. So so after retirement, life insurance. So if we remember that curve, if we get to the top of that mountain, at that point, we should be self-insured. So at that point in our lives, for most of us, there's no more need for life insurance. If we were to pass at that point, we've pretty much self-insured. So there would be money there for a spouse, there would be money there for children or grandchildren. And there's really no reason to have life insurance with respect to our financial future. There could be other reasons why one would have life insurance. Maybe you've just decided to buy a vacation home and you have a mortgage, or or for estate planning purposes, or here's another one. you've decided you want to leave a legacy amount to Ohio University, you can do that in your will. And so whatever remains in your estate when you're gone, you could give all or a portion of it to OU, or you could buy a life insurance policy when you get some point in your life, and you send it annual amounts, which are pretty small compared to your net worth. And if you keep sending those premiums every year, when you die, whenever that is, the university will get the death benefit. So that could be a reason to use. I know Kelly will appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll get to Kelly. Let's do 2 more questions, and then we'll move to Kelly, because I know it's noon and some folks may need to depart soon. I think I know your answer to this question, but is it advisable to combine state teachers and public employees and others accounts if you've changed jobs in the past? So the Ohio, the STRS and OPERS, those sorts of things. Would we want to combine them?
I like the idea of combining those because I am a big believer in decluttering. Now, where we have to be careful is because if we're still in our 30s, for example, and we've only put money into the system for 6, 7, 8 years, the temptation is just to roll it out and move on. Oh, one temptation is to spend it, take it out and spend it. And many of us have done that, right? But if we just roll it into an IRA, there's a chance we're going to be reemployed in that public employees system later in life. And if there is some chance of that, you could leave it there for a while longer. Later in life, when it's pretty clear that we're not going to be reemployed as a professor or an employee at a university or a teacher, I think then it needs to be in an IRA. Yeah.
Great. And last question, is a limited policy a good vehicle for medical professionals right away upon starting a career, or waiting until debt is paid off?
I missed the first part of that, Colleen.
The question is it looks like, is a limited policy, an LTD policy, is it a good vehicle for medical? Oh, I'm sorry, long-term disability.
There you go. Okay, got it. Yes,
I'm not
you.
up on my acronyms.
Yeah.
I know a little.
Okay,
so
good.
is a long-term disability policy a good vehicle for medical professionals?
Yes.
Right away upon
So,
starting a career, or waiting until debt's paid off?
Okay, I've got it. Thank you. Thanks for repeating that.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
each of us, not only medical professionals, but each of us, think about this. The most valuable asset that each of us has by far is our ability to earn an income. If you think about it, if you had a machine down in your basement or in the garage that was printing $100 bills, you would insure it, you would oil it, lubricate it, you would care for it, you'd keep the temperature right in the room, you'd do everything you could to protect that money-making machine. Well, that's what you are. So each of us needs to make darn sure today, we need to call the benefits people or go online and look at, well, what is my long-term disability benefit? And typically those are paid with pre-tax dollars by our employer. So that means the benefit's taxable, which waters it down. So, and typically it's only 60% of our compensation, which waters it down even more. So at the end of the day, there's a gap, and we need to try to fill that gap. Medical professionals they are usually quicker than many others to get that coverage. And so the answer is yes, but each of us needs to look at, that's a critical foundation item. It's not fun, and it takes money every month to pay for it, but it's the single most important insurance that any of us can own. It's more important than life insurance, because with life insurance, if you don't have it, well, we're not going to be here to experience whether we were prepared or not with enough life insurance. But disability insurance, you have to live through that.
Okay, well, thank you. That turned out to be more than 3 questions. We had some being dropped into the chat as you were talking. So great questions. What I'd love to do now is turn things over to Kelly Katowski for just a few minutes to wrap us up. If you don't know Kelly, she's the Executive Director of Gift Planning at Ohio University. I've had the good fortune of knowing her for many years. She's very good at what she does. And she's just going to talk a little bit about gift planning at Ohio University for just a few minutes.
Thank you so
Kelly,
much.
over to you.
Thank you, Colleen. And thanks, Paul, for sharing great ideas and really helpful. I just want to take a few minutes just to kind of add to some of the things that Paul was saying. He really shared some great ideas about building your funds for retirement. And you can go on to the next slide, Barb. Thanks. When you get to that point where where you reach that Paul said, might be some time for some fun things to look at, to do, or you're about to retire and you just want to kind of make sure that you're able to make all your goals, both financial, family goals, and philanthropic goals. I just wanted to share a few points, some great tools that we have that Ohio University can help you with in the Office of Gift Planning. So the first one is just the Charitable IRA Rollover and Beneficiary Designations. This is really more of a tax tip than anything. When you get to a retirement age and you start taking those required mandatory distributions from your IRAs and your 403Bs and your other retirement accounts that you've strived to build up over the years, they can sometimes really increase your income dramatically and put you into a higher tax bracket. Those are actually great gifts to make to charity. So if you have your funds in an IRA, you can do a charitable IRA rollover to charities each year, including the Ohio University Foundation, of any amount up to $100,000 annually. So if you get to a point where you're retired and you find you don't need that retirement income just yet, they are a great asset to use to make your charitable gifts each year. And also, when you're doing your estate planning and looking at reviewing your wills and your trusts and all of your different asset types, IRAs are a great type of asset to leave to a charity. So you can make a beneficiary designation just like you would for a spouse or a child. You can also leave some funds to the Ohio University Foundation or another charity that you're passionate about. And they are more tax advantaged to leave to charities because if you leave those types of assets to a child, they have to pay the income tax on them, but a charity does not. So we would get 100% benefit of your generosity with those. And then the next couple of types of gifts, charitable gift annuities and charitable remainder trusts are types of gift vehicles that folks can set up that pay them an income stream for their lives. So they can be very beneficial. They have some tax benefits like charitable income tax deductions, but they make a gift at the end of life to charity, so to Ohio University. A charitable gift annuity, the way it works is it pays a set income stream. So it's never going to go up and down. It's not subject to any market fluctuations. So it's a very secure, solid income stream. And charitable remainder trusts are a little bit different than that. It also provides an income, but the big benefit with that is that you don't have to pay any capital gain tax on the asset that funds it. So if you have like Amazon stock that you don't want to sell because you're going to get hit with the tax, that would be a great asset to put in a charitable remainder trust and provide a nice income stream to your family. Charitable lead trusts are another type of gift vehicle where if you want to pass wealth down to other generations, like your children or grandchildren, it's a way that you can make a gift that pays first to the charity and then transfers what's left to your family members. So, and it saves a lot of income tax on that. Right now, we're in a great environment just with some of the low tax rates that we have right now, that you could really set one of these up and benefit your family members very greatly. And then the last one that I want to touch upon is donor advised funds. And I think these are just really fun, very flexible tools that everybody could really take advantage of. You can set one up for as little as $10,000. And it's a way that you can work with your family, really share your values, and have a little meeting with your family every year and decide, where do I want to give to this year? And you can support multiple charities with a donor advised fund. The Ohio University Foundation just launched its own donor advised fund last fall. And with that, you can support Ohio University, but you can also support other charities that you're interested in. And it makes just a really fun, flexible gift that you can involve your family members. You can bundle right now in this tax environment where it takes a lot to be able to itemize deductions on your tax return. A donor advised fund is a good way to set up a fund to be able to direct gifts to charity over a number of years, but take advantage of itemizing deductions as well. So those are just a few of the fun tools that you can use as you get ready to plan for retirement that would also help support your alma mater. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email me about that. So thanks again. I'll turn it back over to Colleen, and thanks, Paul, for your informative session too.
Sure, Kelly.
Thank you, Kelly. Great tips. Appreciate that. And again, thank you, Paul, so much for sharing your time and inviting us into your office there a little bit to gain some knowledge from your expertise. We appreciate it so much.
My pleasure. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
So, well, you are most welcome. We are grateful to you. Folks out there, if you're looking to connect more with Ohio University and your fellow alumni, you can visit the Bobcat Network. Think of it like a LinkedIn for Bobcats. You can find that at Bobcat Network. Well, help me out, Dory, here. I don't have the URL memorized, and I don't have it correct here in the notes. There it is, bobcatnetwork.ohio.edu. I knew I was missing something there. So hopefully we might see you on Bobcat Network or next week for the additional panel that Dory dropped in the chat. And as always, you can check our virtual library page, and I dropped that website address in the chat as well. So until next time, thank you all. Thank you again, Paul and Kelly, and we'll see you next time. Have a great day, everyone.